Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I think we'll give them a few minutes to join. We'll wait for a couple of minutes more. Am I audible, Kionix team?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So there's a slight bit of internet connection problem today. So I just
Okay.
wanted to double check, if I'm like audible or not. You're audible.
You're
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think we can get started and let the teams kind of join in. Yeah, so let's get started, and we'll see as and when the students kind of join in. So today, what I'm going to talk about, and also I'm going to share the videos and the learning topics are quite like overall what is required to do well in a career, in terms of your presentation skills, in terms of how to build an environment when you are working remotely. Then how do you typically work in a team? What are the few things you may want to do? Then also certain examples about how can you boost your career by avoiding some common mistakes, or like common scenarios where typically when you're working in an organization you may face certain challenges, etc. So essentially the idea of today's session is to talk to you about all these things as a holistic and as a group, right? So that one, you get a sneak peek and an idea in terms of what's the expectation from the industry when you actually start to work, especially how do you need to work in a team, how do you work in a remote environment, because today's environment is quite hybrid and remote. It's not necessarily every time you go to the office. And then of course, very important, what should be your presentation skill? How should you work on a presentation? What should be the narration? How do you really think about creating a presentation? How do you articulate presentation? All those storytelling methods, and the skill sets which is expected of you to do. And this is not only for these classes or these sessions, but this would be helpful for the future as well. Of course, I think next class onwards, we will be having presentation rounds for all of you folks. But even before that, it's important to understand how that works. And it's also important to understand that, like, typically, how would you work in a professional environment? What are the requirements? What are the expectations? Right? I think those are things, like, few things which we will see today from the and hear from the industry experts in terms of how this should be done, right? And as usual, always feel free to chat and question, and also, like, few of these sessions and presentations today will have some quiz, right? So pay attention, because when those quiz comes in, then you can answer them. You can actually participate in a much more interactive manner there as well, right? So I think that will be helpful. So yeah, so let's get started. So first topic will be, like, how to create good presentation. And I will presentation and storytelling skills. This is very important, because it's important for anything that you do at work, right? So I'll share my screen, and also I'll share the audio and the video, and you can listen to it. Can you please enable screen sharing for me, Kionix team? Right now it
It
is
is
visible.
enabled, sir. No,
It's
it is
enabled?
enabled, sir. You made as a host.
No, so it says host disabled participant screen sharing. That is the message I get.
Oh, no, 1 second. Now it's
Okay, yes, now I am able to share. That's fine. Okay. And let me know if my once I click on the play button, let me know, like, if you're able to hear them, right?
sir, audio not good.
Audio is not
Audio.
audible, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me stop sharing this. Share sound, optimize. Okay. Audio is not hearable, right? Till now?
No, sir.
Okay, let me log out and log back in again. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here. You're able to hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me share the screen.
1 second, sir.
Yeah. Is it enabled?
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right, now let me know.
Now, when you're prepared to make a talk,
Is it
there
audible?
are a few.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes,
when
sir,
you're
it's audible.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So I'll start from the beginning. Now, as I told you, this is about, like, creating and delivering presentation. Typically, how one should present. And this person, the instructor, like Jessica Chen, he is, she's, one of the most popular in the global roles that she plays in terms of educating and coaching the students. So this I hope you will find this pretty interesting, because a lot of the organizations, they actually follow Jessica Chen very closely, and they go through her instructions and courses. So I tried to curate this for all of you so that you can listen to what she has to say. But this is a good one where you can learn quite a bit in terms of how do you typically attempt or how do you prepare for a presentation. What are the different components you should keep in mind? When do you want to tell a story and how do you want to tell a story? What is most important to keep in mind when you start a presentation and end a presentation, or right? So all these things are skills, life skills that is kind of important. So let's listen to Jessica, and then we'll take Q&A and discuss further. Right. So let me start playing the audio.
Now, when you're prepared to make a talk, there are a few things to understand about the dynamics of a speech. Understanding these fundamentals will allow you to think about crafting your presentation more effectively. The first is, don't feel the need to squeeze in every single data point. If you're thinking that inundating your listeners with numbers and facts is going to validate your presentation, my advice is it's going to do the opposite. The less numbers and hard facts, the farther your presentation will go. An effective communicator has some numbers, but is above all able to explain the link between them. An effective communicator's job is to decipher, connect, and explain the links. For example, what does 1 have to do with 2? That middle chunk is what makes a presentation memorable. So while you're crafting your presentation, ask yourself this question. What's the most important high-level point you want your listeners to know about? And then 2, what data point will support or explain that high-level point? The key here is to always step back and figure out what the bigger picture is without getting into too much detail. By figuring out what you'll say, you first have to answer this very important question. Who are you speaking to? Who is your audience? Who's listening? All these points will matter in the way you tailor your message. If you're sharing your idea with, let's say, those in your industry, you can get a little bit more technical because they will understand. But if you're presenting to, say, a broader audience who may not necessarily understand the details, simplify your message by using simple words. Instead of saying, that was atrocious, say that was bad. Or instead of saying, it was hard to comprehend, say, it was hard to understand. Your audience is there to listen to what you're saying, not trying to interpret what it is you're actually trying to say. So make it simple for them. And if you ever find yourself going off tangent, bring yourself back by saying things like, in other words, or to put it simply. Now let's say when you reach an area of your presentation where there are important points you want emphasized. It is completely okay to be obvious about it. This means using direct phrases like, this is important because ... Or if you have a PowerPoint on display for others to see, guide and make sure you clearly explain what people are looking at. Don't just click to a slide and expect people to follow through. It is completely okay to read the words on your slide and explain the graphs that are on there. You can use words such as, this chart shows a breakdown of ... Also, keep this in mind. Even though you are on stage presenting, don't think of it as a presentation, a me versus them. Think about it as a conversation. I want to encourage you to think that presentations can be both informative, interesting, and inspiring if you structure it right. We will begin with how to start your presentation so you can hook the audience in and how you can use storytelling as your foundation. When you're about to make a presentation, whether it's for a meeting, a conference, or in front of just a few people, it's important to create an outline, also known as the flow. What this means is having a beginning, a middle, and end, which is crucial in storytelling. It all has to seamlessly flow because that will help people understand the thought process. Now let's talk about the beginning. It's important to give the audience context of what you're going to be speaking about from the very beginning. The beginning is where you're going to set the stage so the audience can get comfortable with what they're about to listen to. And you can do this in several ways. By explaining why you are the one presenting, or explaining what the audience will get out of this presentation, or why people should care. And the way to do this is to hook them with emotions they can relate to. If you're giving a presentation about a project you've been working on, you may start the talk by saying, "This is a project I have been working on with my team, and my challenge was to solve X, Y, and Z. It wasn't easy because of A, B, and C, but I really wanted to learn how to develop the project, so I did ... What I did was I started with a story. It could be your own. And then I brought in the emotion, which was the challenge that I faced in the process. This form of introduction also does two things. It humanizes you because emotions are what connects us. And two, it creates that investment because now I want to know what happened on your journey. It's important to see presentations as an opportunity to take your listeners and viewers on an experience. Now, I'd like for you to think of the middle as the journey. This is where you will unleash the facts and data you've uncovered. Now, there are multiple ways to do this, but the most effective way is to actually start with the results. If we don't do it this way in TV broadcasting, we call this bearing the lead. We start with what we discovered, and then we work backwards with how we got there. The second way is to present data from its first step and then go chronologically. It is easy to understand and it creates a nice flow. Whichever way you choose, always keep in mind your audience. You don't want to lose them in any part of your presentation. One of the best ways to do this is to provide numericals. This is especially important in the middle because it's often where the audience can get lost. For example, say the first thing I looked for was A, B, and C. Then the second was this, and so on and so forth. This provides a chronological order which makes it easier to understand. Another important note is to try and keep your points to 3 or 4. Though you may have taken several steps to achieving your results, your listeners don't want to hear the small details where it seems to go on and on. Keep it high level with the main points. When you're going from one point to the other, don't just read off the presentation slide. Use words like therefore, because, as a result. That's part of storytelling because it links it all together. Answering the how and the why is how you'll hook and connect the dots in your presentation. Like every good story, there is an ending that evokes some sort of positive or reflective emotion. If you got people thinking about what you said in a good way, you've successfully graduated to being a powerful presenter. Now, the best way to end your presentation is to link it back to the beginning. For example, if you started your talk sharing a story, bring it back to that same story and explain why it connects. If you started your presentation with talking about yourself and how you tackled the project, a strong way to end the presentation is by you tying it back to you and sharing what you gained from the data, result, or research. Bringing your presentation full circle is the easiest way to make a presentation stand out. As an added note, depending on the type of presentation you're making, ensuring you include a call to action is also very effective. This is especially true if you're trying to motivate others with your speech or if you're trying to get your colleagues on board with you. A call to action is a marketing and advertising term, and it basically refers to actions your listeners can take to encourage immediate action. Your call to action can really be as simple as asking listeners to follow you on your website or social media, or it could be asking your colleagues to start working on a key aspect of a bigger project that results in a common goal. You've likely gotten their attention with your presentation, so hook them while you still have their eyes and ears on you. So when thinking of using your body language, your hands are there to help accentuate your point. Now, oftentimes we are already using our hands to do just that without noticing it. So here are some tips on how to use your hands as nonverbal highlighters. When you're trying to emphasize a word or a point, use your hand motion like pushing it forward to show that there is significance to what you're saying. You can also use your hands as a descriptive. For example, if you are talking about something big, you can gesture like it's big. Or if you're talking about something small, you can pinch your fingers to show the smallness. Even though your hands can be an asset, if you use it wrong though, it can diminish your presence and make you look fidgety and a bit insecure. So here are some don't do's with your hands. Avoid putting your hands in your pocket or behind you while talking because that can signal nervousness and it can diminish your presence. Next, don't point at people. It can look aggressive, unwelcoming, and a bit off-putting. Avoid clasping your hands in front of you because it will inevitably draw attention to the wrong place. Don't make movements like slicing the air or chopping into an open palm more than once because it can look very aggressive. If possible, avoid putting anything in your hands like a pen or paper unless it is absolutely necessary. Though it may ease your nervousness, you will unconsciously fumble with it while you're presenting, which may be a bit distracting. Next, let's focus on the smile. Now, the reason why this is so important is because smiling makes every person in the room feel like you are talking to just them. Smiling is warm and it's inviting. In your eyes, make eye contact with the people sitting there. It is so powerful, and I know that can induce some anxiety because looking at people is a reminder that they are focused on you. But if you can casually glance at people in the audience from time to time, lock eyes, though don't hold it for too long, people will want to pay more attention to you and what you're saying. How can you use enthusiasm and passion? Well, it's by having inflections and a varying voice pitch. Fluctuate between speaking slowly because that will keep people engaged. For example, if I'm trying to stress the significance of why a data point is particularly important, I will slow down the words and say, this is extremely important. Next, don't be afraid of pauses. Pauses create effect. Plan where you're going to pause and when it might be appropriate, like after an important point is made. Because this does two things. First, it allows the listeners to let the point sink in, which drives your point home. And two, it gives you time to rest for a second or two. It's also important to be thoughtful about your inflections because forcing it will seem a bit inorganic. For the inflections to come naturally, try to deeply connect with your material. Try and feel the essence of what your message is and what you want to get across. This will help you emphasize points you feel are truly important. Your inflection can also control the intimacy of the environment you are creating. For example, by varying your speech to speaking softer and slower, it gets people to lean in and listen more closely. It changes the energy of the room, which is powerful in the dynamics of a presentation. Your tone of voice helps show your passion and enthusiasm. Inflection and varying pitch tone makes your presentation engaging. Speaking slowly and softly creates intimacy. Pause for effect. How can you use if you're speaking and you're
So I'll pause for a moment, right, and then just reflect on what are the few things we actually heard and learned, right? So the tips that Jessica is talking about is all about thinking of how do you start even building for a presentation. And by the way, the presentation techniques is not restricted only to creating a PowerPoint or creating an Excel sheet. It could be anything. She talks about examples of how you would typically go out on a stage and speak to a larger audience. Towards the end of the presentation, we will also see, and I have not played that part yet, that she will talk about presentation in a virtual world. That is something that we are having right now. For example, we all have logged into the Zoom, versus presentation in the real world in terms of going to a auditorium and speaking in front of the people, what could be the few differences how you may want to approach it? But the fundamental remains the same. So today, if you are asked to work on a project and present, then your fundamental doesn't really change whether you are talking on a virtual platform or versus in a real world, in a real world auditorium. Right? You still need to prepare your presentation. You still need to write the script. You need to think of how do you want to build the story? How many slides? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is going to be the starting? What is going to be the connecting the dots, right? So all these things you would need to do and ensure that your presentation and your entire communication to the audiences that you're making is going to be flowing through. So few key things to remember would be, one, always even before you start working on a presentation, first think, what are the 5 things you will want to talk about? And again, as you heard Jessica mention, you should not be thinking of talking about 20 different things. You should be talking about 4 different things or 3 different things, but impactful things. So what is the bigger picture? So for example, tomorrow, if a project has been given to you and you as a group are supposed to work on it and come and present in this class, how would you go about it? You would go about it by ensuring that, one, you understand the question first, number one. Number two, if that is the question, then what are the possible answers? And out of those answers, what is most critical and how would you want to articulate that? That will help you to determine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of a story flow, what flows after the other. It's as good as when we, let's say, for example, watch Netflix or Amazon Prime, and then there's a series, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4, right? It's a series, one follows the other. So here presentation is also, think of it as a series, slide 1 is episode 1, slide 2 is episode 2, right? And then how would you typically narrate and articulate, and then come to the end where there is a clear actionable item, learnings and observations, like very pinpointedly, we should be doing XYZ, very clearly articulated, right? So that's the skill of a good presentation, where you are able to narrate and stitch the story together, and that's exactly what Jessica talks about. Now, how do you do it? You do that sometimes when you are in a stage, your body reactions, your hand movement, your eye contact, etc. She also talks about smiling. So, and I think that's important because we all are human beings, and the audience always wants to connect with the presenter or the group of presenters, right? So how would you typically articulate? So think of it as a conversation and not feel pressured that, oh, you know what, I have to go and present and I have to go and talk in front of 20 people, 30 people, 100 people. No, it's as good as talking like a conversation. Just like, you would have a conversation over a cup of coffee and talk about something, that will automatically help you to relax as well and present, right? So I think these are few important things to kind of keep in mind in general, when you're looking at working on certain presentations, etc. And we'll hear more in terms of how engaging you should keep your you should basically keep your presentations, right? So let's hear more from this.
If you're speaking and you're noticing that your audience is starting to get distracted and they're looking on their phones, well, it might signal that they're bored. So the best way for you to bring their attention back is to use your voice. Now, this is where inflections and the variety in your tone of voice will perk up their ears again, because they might have drowned you out while you were speaking. You can also use your body to move around the stage that you are, potentially walking across the room to demonstrate something, an action, or even getting off the stage too. That all would take a bit more improvising, but if you're at a level where you're fairly comfortable speaking already, this movement will be a great way to get their attention back. If you notice people are starting to whisper to one another or talk to one another, it's a signal that they might have lost interest in your thought process, or it could mean that they didn't hear you and they're asking their neighbors for clarification. If you notice that they're doing this, grab their attention back by asking a question like, "Can I help clarify a point?" it'll be a bit off guard to them, so they'll stop whatever it is that they're doing and listen to you. If you notice people are taking notes, this means you're doing a great job. It means people are taking in what it is that you are saying, and you are providing a lot of value, and it's interesting to them. But the key here is, if you notice that they are writing, try slowing down your speech just a little bit so it gives them time to write and process their thoughts. You may also think about pausing for a few seconds as well, because you are clearly saying something very good, so don't rush through it. If you're giving a presentation at a meeting and you say, hey, I noticed many of you guys are writing down points, well, I can send you a high-level summary of what we discussed today. Now, saying and doing something like that is great leadership. The first thing is plan and prepare to walk a little bit, even if you're giving a presentation on a stage. By doing so, when you're on stage, it'll look like you're comfortable and it'll give the appearance of presence. You have the space to yourself, so don't be afraid to use it. But this doesn't necessarily mean pacing back and forth from left to right. There has to be a swift movement as you move from one side to the other, and pause at each side. It keeps your talk interesting because it keeps people's eyes on you. But there are ways to do this strategically as well. Some good times to walk are when you are transitioning topics or points, and when you're in the storytelling flow. Make sure you're doing it in a gentle, slow motion and use your hands, but stop when you're trying to drive your point home. Now, here are some things to be aware of. Too much walking and walking too fast can be distracting. If you're giving a talk in a conference room and not a formal stage, using the front of the room to gently walk from side to side is completely acceptable. The art is to walk a little less than if you had the full stage, though, because of the small amount of space that you might have. So what if you had a podium that the organizers are asking if you want to use? Should you stand behind it? Well, the podium is kind of like a security blanket. But if you are capable and confident enough, I challenge you to not use the podium at all, to not hide behind it. Hopefully you've prepared your presentation enough so that you can speak confidently on your speech or topic, and you won't necessarily need notes. And if that is the case, I challenge you to stand in front of the podium because it's the easiest way to exude confidence. When you're recording yourself on camera, imagine yourself just talking to a person. Imagine yourself explaining your thoughts and presentation to people and not to a screen. So that means still smiling, using inflections, using your hands, all things you would normally do if you were speaking in front of people. If it still feels unnatural to you, you may even think about taping a picture near the camera, a picture of a loved one, because that can remind you that at the other side of this camera are still people who are going to be listening and watching you. When you switch your mind into thinking that the camera is actually a human, it'll allow you to think more naturally, soften up a bit, and it'll appear more conversational. Another tip that's really the easiest to do when presenting on camera is to look at the camera lens and not at the screen. It's so simple, yet it's something I see fail all the time. When you look at the lens, it makes the viewers feel you are looking at them, which makes it more personal and intimate. Also, when you remind yourself that you're speaking to people, don't just stare at the lens and focus too hard. Just like you wouldn't stare at people when you're talking to them, gently move your eyes up or down because that is a very natural process.
All right. And I will stop sharing my screen now and pause a bit for all of you to just soak in as to what we just heard in terms of presentation or what is a good presentation, etc. So at this moment, I wanted to check if any one of you have any questions And these questions can be from the students or even from the other L2s or anybody who is there as well to facilitate some sort of engagement or conversation here in the group, right? If there is any questions or any thoughts or anything that you may want to share based on your experience of how presentations have been, etc. I think this is a forum where you should be speaking. So I'll wait for comments from your end. Because tomorrow, when you are asked or when you are given an assignment and you have to present, then I think these tips will come in handy, and your evaluation is going to be accordingly done too. So hence it is very important to understand what are the good practices or the best practices of presentation, so that you are able to implement them. So any questions, thoughts, ideas, experiences? Anything at all from anybody? Okay, so looks like all of you have understood the presentation good skills. So we would like to see them now implemented in your presentations when you are making. I'd be keen to kind of evaluate those projects and evaluate the groups as well, right? So let's move on to the next topic, which is more in terms of boosting your career. And there are a few topics here, right? So it's about your behavioral patterns in an organization, and boosting your career by avoiding certain mistakes, etc., or probably what you should be doing in an organization, what you should not be doing, or what you should be doing, etc., right? And this is where you will also have some quiz exercise wherein you can definitely participate much more, right? So listen to this carefully, and then there will be this interactive quiz. So I'll share my screen and I will play.
If you're like most people, you go to work every day. As adults, it's where we spend most of our time. Now, when things go right at work, it can be transformational. You grow your skills, you accomplish great things, and you advance your career. But when things go wrong, it can quickly get messy. So in this course, I've put together a powerful list of 21 mistakes you should avoid at work. If you're like most people, you go to work every day. As adults, of our time. Now, when things go right at work, it can be transformational. You grow your skills, you accomplish great things, and you advance your career. But when things go wrong, it can quickly get messy. So in this course, I've put together a powerful list of 21 mistakes you should avoid at work. My name is Julie Nisbet. I'm a consultant, a nonprofit co-founder, and I'm also an instructor in the Professional and Continuing Education Department at UC Santa Barbara. I've worked for a lot of different companies, large and small, and been on even more teams. All of these mistakes are ones I've made myself or seen other people make, and with a little effort, they're all avoidable. So if you're ready to do better at work, let's dive in. We've all been there. It's natural when you get a new job or join a new team to compare all the ways in which your new team is different from your old team. You should absolutely bring your past experiences to your current role. However, be careful not to make the common mistake of dwelling on the past. It's an easy mistake to make. Maybe your last experience wasn't entirely positive, so you're trying to compliment your new team, or you're anxious to have an impact, so you want to mention all the ways that you used to do things. It's really important, especially early on, to keep things in a good light and learn as much as you can about the way things operate in your new environment. So instead of revisiting the past, use joining a new team or starting a new job as a chance to start fresh and learn new things. If you're a hard worker, Anxious to make a good first impression and eager to make an impact, it can be tempting to say yes to everything that crosses your desk. While it's important to get into the swing of things as quickly as possible and be open to learning as much as you can, be careful to avoid the common mistake of taking on too much too soon. Don't underestimate the amount of time it will take to learn new systems, jargon, acronyms, and company culture. All of these things will impact your early productivity on a new team. It's better to take on less and ensure that you're really knocking it out of the park early than take on too much and immediately feel under pressure. And also, another pro tip, for the things that you do take on, keep an eye out for the things that will have maximum impact or elevate your visibility in your company. Don't just take on work to be busy. Be helpful, but also be strategic. It can be really tempting early on in a new job or on a new team to try to make changes. While we should all make efforts to improve the way we do work, it's important to avoid the mistake of trying to make changes without properly understanding the company culture. Not understanding company culture, it's like swimming upstream. You might make some progress, but you're more likely to get swept away. If you want to affect change, you really have to understand the environment you're working in. You need to understand your team's values and priorities. Framing your ideas within that context will allow you to get others on board. So be smart and don't come in too hot. Take the time to get to know your team before rocking the boat too hard. You're much more likely to be successful if you do. Let's be honest, work can be frustrating. It can feel like you're subject to all sorts of processes and bureaucracy that seem to only exist in order to get in the way of doing your job. However, it's important not to make the mistake of complaining too much about the way things are without putting in the effort to make suggestions for improvements. The key to approaching conversations like this is to come in with questions rather than complaints and suggestions, not demands. It's possible that once you really dig in and ask the right questions about why things are done the way they are, you'll discover that they're in fact valid reasons that you didn't fully appreciate. The best case scenario, however, is that your manager is open to change, and that is a perfect opportunity to provide a suggestion to management for how things could improve. So avoid being overly negative, take the reins, make some suggestions. The worst they can say is no.
All right, and we will pause to talk about some quiz that I know we have here, right? So the first question, sorry, I think this is going to go fast.
No matter what your job is.
Okay, these quiz questions are really quite fast. So if you are starting a new job, what is the most important reason that you do not dwell on the past? What would be the answer? If you are starting a new job, what is the most important reason that you do not dwell on the past? What would be the answer?
No matter what your job, let's be honest.
So any answers from the team? And you have to be very fast because this changes very fast. If you were
Option C, sir.
Option C, you're saying your past experiences will not apply to a new jobs. Okay. Anything else? Read the question again. If you're starting a new job, what is the most important reason that you do not dwell on the past? That is like, what is the most important reason you do not think about the past? Somebody said
Option B, sir. You will miss opportunities to learn new things.
Okay, so C or B?
B.
Okay, let's see. And let's submit. Yes, that's correct. Right? The reason is because honestly, as you heard, you will not get a chance to learn new things if you are constantly thinking about oh, in my previous job, this, or if you're in a complaining mode. I think a lot of times what happens is when we join a new organization, there are certain things which is very different from what you've done in the past, right? And that's absolutely fine. But the mindset should be open. The mindset should be, okay, fine. I may know some things more, I may know some things lesser, but whatever it is, initial days, let me go and find out how things are done here. And that is where you start talking with the teams, the people, the multiple teams across, and they will also start feeling comfortable that, like, oh yes, you are coming in from so and so organization or so and so projects, but yet you are trying to kind of learn new things or learn the culture, etc. Right? So hence, like, with a new job, you'd always want to start fresh, even if, like, you have a lot of experience. I mean, it's all good. The reason why you are hired is because you have an experience. But even if you have an experience, you should, in your mind, always think that let's start, like, fresh, and let's see what the company does, what the team does, what is the reason why certain things are working in particular way. And that is where, like, you belong to a team. You start, like, being as a part of the team, right? And that should help you, right? So hence the answer is B. Now let's look at the next question. Now, this is a case, example. It says Kia is starting a new job in a team leader position, right? Some person. To make a first good impression, how much work should Kia take on, right? So whenever we are joining an organization, we always, like, want to prove ourselves. We want to be the best. We want the visibility. We want everybody to talk about us, right? And obviously, work is something, like, which is going to be showing that. So in this scenario, what should be the right answer?
As much as work as possible.
Okay, I see some chat also. Oh no, that's not an answer. Okay, in the chat somebody has, okay, that's not. All right, as much as work as possible. All right, any other answers? Any other answers?
Option B, sir.
Option B, the amount of work that is given to her. Okay, and why do you say that? Whoever answered this question, option B, why do you say that?
Yes, sir. So the amount of work that has assigned to me, that should be completed for employer.
Okay, and somebody who said as much work as possible, what is the logic? Why do you say that?
So that shows her capability.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's see. I will click on this and see. Incorrect, right? Let's say this one. Incorrect. So both are incorrect, right? So let's click on this one. So which means a small amount of work. So which means, and the reason I clicked on both of them, because they were incorrect. And the reason they are incorrect is because if you heard correctly what the person was saying, when you are new, you always have that willingness or that eagerness to prove something. Now, if option A is correct, if you said option A is as much work as possible, which means, like, you are given 20 different work or 30 different work, right? But in the eagerness of proving yourself, you're not saying no to it. But that will not lead to anything quality. That will only deteriorate. You should do things, like, which you are capable of, and do it well. Now, the same option B is also something similar. The amount of work that is given to her is just the language that is different. As much as work as possible, or the amount of work that is given to her is the language different. The meaning is the same, right? So here the explanation is, although Kia may not have a choice, she can negotiate with the supervisor for the amount of work, because honestly, if you don't have the bandwidth, why should you take up the work and not do a quality job, right? So the idea is you should always do a quality work over quantity. And that is where you get the visibility, because nobody in the organization will ever say no to a good quality. But rather, you may take up 10 different things, but if you don't do those 10 different things well, you are thinking, like, you're doing 10 things, but you're not doing it well, right? That shouldn't be the case. So hence the answer is C, a small amount of work which is measured, which is relevant, and where you can make that impact, right? Now, let's look at the next question. Again, an example of, on Nathan's first day as the departmental head in his new job, so which means he's joined in some role where he's a head. He sees processes that need to change. He realizes some changes need to happen. If he starts implementing the change, in which scenario would he be most likely to fail? So what is it that he is doing that which is most likely that he will fail? Which means what shouldn't he do, right? So choices, answers. Okay, somebody is
Option
mentioning
B,
something
sir.
in chat. Option B, that is Shamil, right? Okay, Shamil says option B. Okay,
Option B, sir.
option B. Okay, anything else?
Option B, sir.
Option B. No, there are only three options: A, B, C. So the option B is what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So you are saying that, if he has not learned the culture of the company and his team, he is most likely to fail, right? So, okay. So they're both option Bs. Let's see. Let's submit. And that's correct. Because when you join a work or a team, the first thing is to understand what is the team culture, what is the work they're doing, why are they doing certain work, and you also have to build that, the camaraderie with the team. Now, option C is also correct to some extent. Correct. It's not wrong, because you need to kind of gain the trust of the people, trust of the team members. But that trust builds over time. So here in the question, it is in which scenario he is most likely to fail. This is an immediate scenario, and hence option B is correct. Had this question been a little different, like in the longer run, what would be the correct ones? Then I think option B and option C both would be correct, because you definitely need to kind of build the trust of gain the trust of the team members as well, right? So that is also important. But I think option B is correct. So thank you for answering the question. Now let's look at the last question in this section. Okay. When Naseem starts his new job as a production foreman, right? Again, production. He sees a multitude of safety violations, means in the process, he sees a lot of violations. How should he best approach to notify the management? How should he, typically let the management know that, yes, there are some violations. What should he do? Right? What is the option, the answer? I see a chat over here. Shamil says C. Okay. C is
Option C.
oh, sorry. Okay, you also say option C. Okay, he should list out the safety issues in a neutral manner and suggest improvements for addressing each issue. Okay.
C, sir.
Anybody else? Anything else? Both of you have said C. Anything else? Any other answer? Okay.
C, sir.
Okay. Why do you say C? Can you explain? Can you share your thoughts as to why do you think you should say C? Why do you feel it should be C?
So since it's
First,
a
he
new
should,
job,
Go ahead.
first he should be able to list out the issues, sir. Then he should escalate it to the team.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's look at the answer C. I shall submit. And this is correct. Absolutely. Because first, instead of directly, option 1 says he should directly confront management. Which management will like when you are somebody new, and even if you are right, you may be new and you may be right, that is fine. But nobody will like, okay, you know what, on the day one itself, you're talking about don't do this or this is not correct, etc., etc. There's a way in which we should communicate, right? So that's not the answer. He should provide a carefully developed set of demands. Again, similar to point number 1, I need to do this 10 different things. You need to provide me with 10 different things. That's demanding, right? Rather, he should list out and he should go with some solution. He should go with some improvements in mind, right? So always remember, behaviorally, you can come to me with a problem. That's fine. I'm here to listen. But while articulating that problem, you must also a matured leader or a matured person would also provide some solution, saying, I think there are these 5 problems and hence I'm coming to you, but I also feel these could be the probable solutions to it. May not be, but I thought this through and I wanted to share with you. Now that's the right approach. You come Not only with just a problem saying, you know what, I have this problem, I have that problem, etc., but you also come with a solution bent of mind as well. That is important, and it is very, very critical. The people who succeed in corporate life has to have this behavioral aspect. Otherwise, you will see people complaining, people are being asked to leave, people are not able to get a promotion, people are not able to, because it's all about perception. One should perceive you as somebody who is a solution provider, who has the bent of the mind to provide solution, right? And not really complain and crib. That's important, right? And hence that balance is important. So good. I think we got most of the answers correct, except question number 2, where there was a little bit of deviation. But again, we learned as to, like, what could be the ones that is there, right? So now let's move on.
No matter what your job
kind of
is,
watching this, right? And then again, end of this chapter, we'll again have more questions, and then we'll see, right? Okay. Let me play.
no matter what your job is, being a good listener is one of the most important skills you can learn. Most disputes are the result of poor communication, and improving your listening skills is critical to your success at work. This is why you need to avoid the mistake of being a bad listener. When you develop good listening skills, you'll actually be more productive by ensuring you really understand whatever tasks you have been assigned. And it can also help you avoid misunderstandings with coworkers. So what makes a good listener? Well, a 2016 Harvard Business Review study found the following. People perceive the best listeners to be those who periodically ask questions that promote discovery and insight. Good listeners make the other person feel supported and convey confidence in them. In other words, good listeners were able to create an environment in which issues and differences could be discussed openly. Poor listeners were seen as competitive, as listening only to identify errors in reasoning or logic, using their silence as a chance to prepare their next response. So there you have it. Put in the time to improve your listening skills. You'll be glad you did. As I've worked on teams inside of many companies, one common mistake I've seen individuals make is lacking initiative or showing too much. Initiative is one of those rare qualities that manages to be seen as both a positive and a negative trait in the workplace, depending on the situation. Researcher Donald Campbell referred to this as the initiative paradox. As he puts it, employees are expected to use independent judgment and initiative and simultaneously expected to think and act like their bosses. So how are you supposed to know when to show initiative and when to just keep your head down? Unfortunately, the answer to that is, of course, it depends. But the most important thing is to respect the company culture. Is this an environment where initiative is encouraged, or were you given a large set of rules and processes that you were expected to follow to the letter? Understanding your environment can help prevent you from making the mistake of lacking initiative or showing too much. What did we decide in that meeting? Did you say you would take care of that, or did I? And when did you want me to finish that for you? Do those questions sound all too familiar? In a fast-paced environment, it's really easy to forget details, so be sure that you're setting yourself up for success. First of all, close your laptop while you're in meetings. I know that multitasking is tempting, especially if you're, let's admit it, a little bored, but just don't do it. Close your laptop, focus on the task at hand, and if you really aren't needed in that meeting, figure out how to not go to the next one. Secondly, take notes by hand. Seriously, close your laptop. It's too tempting to do other things if you're taking notes on your laptop, and we're more likely to retain things when we write them by hand. Finally, save the last 5 minutes of every meeting to agree on action items. And you guessed it, write them down. Did you get all of that? When you can master the details, it will do wonders for your career. Being self-sufficient is great, and it's good to show initiative and try to solve problems before asking for help. However, it's really important to know the difference between self-sufficiency and wasting time and energy. So be careful not to make the mistake of not asking for help when you need it. When I changed careers and became a software engineer, this was the hardest lesson for me to learn. I hated asking for help, but I had to learn really quickly that my ego was getting in the way of my learning. Knowing how and when to ask for help is one of the most important skills you can acquire. And now that I'm in the position of teaching others, I would so much prefer someone ask a question than spend an hour going down the wrong track. So remember to ask for help when you need it. You'll be happy you did. I'm guessing your boss is busy. If they've gotten to the position of leadership, they're probably in a ton of meetings, and it might just feel like they never have any time. At one of my jobs, my coworkers and I would rochambeau over who got the 7 a.m. time slot versus the 6 a.m. time slot on our manager's calendar, because almost every day he was in meetings from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. nonstop. No matter how busy they are, however, don't fall into the trap of not checking in regularly with your boss. Ask your boss for a good time and set up a recurring one-on-one meeting, either once a week or once every other week, and make sure you both stick to it. Try not to make these meetings status updates about day-to-day tasks, and instead use the opportunity to discuss your goals and to build a rapport with the person that will ultimately be responsible for your career advancement. It's important that your boss gets to know you as a person and knows where you want to be. A good boss will be excited to help you get there, so check in regularly to make sure you're on the right path.
Okay, so we are back to the quiz time, right? So let's look at this. The first question: what is the best reason for an employee to use a check-in time with your boss? So basically, we all know that, bosses and managers would be very busy, and you need to kind of, get that time. So what is the best reason in terms of, why you should be having that conversation with the boss, right? So any answers to this?
Option B, sir, to show the
Option
boss who
B.
they are. Yeah.
Okay, it says to show the boss who they are and to share their career goals. Okay, option B. Any other options? Anybody? Shamil says option A in the chat. Okay, let's read option A. To let the boss know they are interested in feedback on their performance. Okay, all right. Anybody else? Anything? Okay, let's look at option B. That's correct. So a good leader or a good boss is always ready to help and guide their team members along the career path, and which can only happen if the employees share their goals, right? So if the employees do not share their goals, or the team members do not share their goals with their leader, right, then anyway a leader cannot help them. So a lot of times in the organizations, etc., the team members say, what, oh, my boss doesn't have time, he or she is always busy, I have no clarity about what my goals are, or what do I want to do, my boss is not helping me. But for your boss to help you, you have to help the boss as well. It goes hand in hand. Hence, option B is correct. So it's very important that you use a regular check-in time with your boss. And by the way, this check-in time should be really used to have meaningful discussions. It should not be just wasted, because you only have that much of time because your boss is busy, right? So you should leverage that to the best of the conversations. And that's important, right? So, all right, let's move on to the next question. What is a common attribute of the best listener? So who would be a good listener according to you? Answer? It's an easy one.
They periodically ask questions.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. Let's look at this and see whether it's correct or not. It is correct. So typically a good listener is somebody who, one, will make you feel comfortable. So even this point number C, generate feeling of support, is also close, right? But in the context of this question is more correct, because the moment you are able to ask those questions in that conversation, right, and facilitate a meaningful dialogue, it just creates an environment where the other person is also feeling comfortable talking about it, discussing about it, right? That's the best quality of a person who is able to listen well. A good listener will always make the people comfortable, would periodically ask questions, would listen more, talk less, but then whatever he or she talks is meaningful. And that makes the people comfortable to open up. That is good listening, right? And let's look at the next question. When a manager is in a new job and trying to determine the amount of initiative to show, what should they respect and follow? What is the answer? And all of these are very tricky. All the options, right? So what is the correct answer according to you? Answers? Anything? Anybody? Answers?
Option A, sir.
Option A. Okay. Anybody else? Any other answer? Sorry? There is something in chat. Harika says B. Okay. All right.
Option A.
Option A, option B. Okay. Let's look at option B first. That's what Harika said. Let's see. Incorrect. The reason is simply following the directives is not part of the initiative. You should not just take up the work just because you're asked to do, right? Intuition. Incorrect, right? Because just by going by your gut feeling is not good enough. You need to understand the company culture, and hence this question was important, right? So one has to understand the company culture. Only then he or she would be able to understand how much initiative should I take. When is an initiative? When should I keep quiet? Or what is a smart way of taking an initiative? Does the company culture allow me to take that initiative? In a lot of companies, you don't. They're very top driven, right? In a lot of companies, you are able to take those initiatives because it creates an environment of fosters environment of collaboration, etc. Correct. So understanding the company culture, understanding how your teams are, understanding what way to kind of navigate through is important before you kind of show that initiative. So that is important. So hence company culture is the right answer, right? So let's move on to the next question. What simple task can keep participants from forgetting important points in the meeting? I think this is very easy.
Taking notes by hand.
Taking notes by
Option
hand.
C.
Okay. So question is, what simple task can keep participants from forgetting? So what should the participants do to not forget, to take important points in the beginning? What should they do? So somebody said taking notes by hand. Sorry, you are saying?
Option C.
Option C. Okay. That is basically taking notes by hand. Anybody else? Any other option? Let's see. Correct. People retain more when they write out notes by hand. I still do. When I kind of speak and I'm getting into a meeting, I have my diary on the notepad where I kind of scribble. A lot of times people say, in the digital world, you can take notes in a laptop, etc. All good. But sometimes certain old school always works. So taking a note by hand is helpful for sure. And I do take notes in the notepad. So yes, it is helpful. All right. What do managers most appreciate when it comes to employees asking for help?
Option C.
Option C. Okay.
Option C, sir.
Okay.
Option C.
Okay. There is a lot of option C. All right. Let's see. Option C. Incorrect. Read the question again. What do managers most appreciate when it comes to employees asking for help? So if you are a manager, I am an employee, I'm coming and asking for help. What will you appreciate in me the most? Of course, option C is not completely wrong, but in the context of this question, what will be the first option? Option? Sorry, which option? Okay, something in chat has come. Raghuram says option A. Somebody says option B also. Okay, Shamil initially said C and then said B. Raghuram says A. So
Option A.
let's look at option A. Correct. Remember, we watched that having a mindset of solving a problem is the most important thing. So if you are the manager and I'm coming to you with a problem, but I'm also coming to you with some probable solutions, may not be accurate, but that mindset is appreciated, because as a manager, you will feel, okay, you know what, this person is not only coming and complaining, but he or she is also bringing in some attempt as to, like, what could be a probable, solution to it. So that mindset of problem solving is important. That's a key takeaway, right? Now let's move on to the next one, the foundational skills, right? What are the things, like, we typically tend to make an error. So let's hear.
Do you consider yourself a night owl? Do you try to go to bed early, but no matter what, seem to struggle to fall asleep? According to a growing number of studies, it really is harder to be a night owl, as your internal clock doesn't match up with the externally and socially imposed timing of day-to-day life. That being said, if you do shift work or just work for a company that generally follows a specific set of working hours, don't make the mistake of being late. Honestly, it's not fair, and everyone should be allowed to work at the times they feel most productive. However, unfortunately, not everyone has embraced this way of thinking, and until we have a cultural evolution, you gotta be on time. It communicates that you care about your job and that you care about your coworkers. Not only that, but being on time will reduce your stress and start your day off on a positive note. Finally, no matter what, do not show up late with a to-go cup of coffee in your hand. Don't communicate that you care more about your morning latte than you do about being on time. Trust me, it's not a good look. Work communication has definitely changed with technology. Conversations that used to happen on the phone or in person, more and more are happening via emails, text messages, or workplace communication tools like Slack. While this has made communication much more efficient, don't make the mistake of communicating too casually. Always remember that even though you're using the same technology that you use to chat with your friends, keep things professional. Also, be careful about what you post in public forums. I've known of people being demoted or even fired due to a poorly executed joke on a public Slack channel. It's always challenging to convey tone via text. So even if you think your stuck out tongue emoji indicates that you're joking, there's a really good chance that someone else is not going to pick up on the sarcasm. Finally, if you're having a disagreement with someone, pick up the phone, jump on a video call, or go over to their desk. It's always easier to resolve in person rather than by text. I like a good reality show as much as the next person. However, be careful to avoid making your life feel like one by getting pulled into office drama. Unless something impacts you directly, you should try to avoid getting involved. It's fine if a friend or a colleague wants to vent to you, but make sure the conversation stays between the two of you, and always have those conversations in a private setting rather than in the office. Be especially careful with written communication, and don't write anything that you wouldn't feel comfortable being broadcast to the entire office. And finally, be a vault. Never repeat anything that you have heard that you know probably shouldn't be repeated. The easiest and best way to avoid office drama is to just keep your mouth shut. These days, the line between personal life and professional life can get incredibly blurry. Companies are providing lots of extra perks to make work feel, well, less like work. What used to be mostly the purvey of tech companies has become more and more mainstream. There's drinks in the fridge, as well as a seemingly endless stream of extracurricular bonding activities like holiday parties or team offsites. While it's tempting to treat these activities as casual gatherings of your friends, don't treat these events too casually. And remember that if these activities are sponsored by your company, you're still on the clock. It's hard not to feel like a kid in a candy store, especially early in your career when you're budgeting every penny and you're suddenly faced with free drinks, endless appetizers, and a chance to vent to your work family about how annoying that one client is. Save those conversations for one-on-one chats in private settings, and be careful with how much you drink. If you're like me, it's easy enough to stick your foot in your mouth without any external help.
Okay, so let's look at the quiz time. So the first question, Raphael often arrives late to work because he has to wait in a long line in a coffee shop. What message is he conveying, which is the worst to overcome? What's the answer? what is the nearest answer? Pretty interesting options, but what is the nearest? Answers? Anybody?
Option B, sir.
Option B, which means he's telling his co-workers that he does not really care about them. Okay. There is something in the chat, but Shamil says option A. All right, let's look at option A. That's incorrect. He's telling the company that being reliable is not important to him. He's not telling that. Look at his attitude. So he basically is like, spending long time in a queue, getting a cup of coffee before coming to work, right? So that doesn't show that, like, being reliable is not important to him. He's not saying that, right? So what else
Sir,
is he saying? So
C.
yeah, Harika also says A. Okay, so okay, now you have changed your mind. You have changed your mind to C. All right, let's see C.
B.
C is incorrect. So your first answer was correct. So he's telling his co-workers that he doesn't really care about them, right? C, in option C, he can overcome the stress of this thing, right? By being late or by leaving home earlier. That is stress management, pure stress management. He can do anything. He doesn't really need to wait long line in a coffee and arrive late. Stress management can happen in different way. We all have our different ways of managing stress, right? But in the option B, he's telling his co-workers that he doesn't really care about them, and that's true, because it's an arrogance. Because, oh, you know what, I will first take my coffee and only then I'll come to work, or I will first get my coffee and only then I will come and start working. Now that's being insensitive and not being respectful of your co-workers, because your co-workers are also busy in their life. They also have a lot of things to do. They would have also woken up early in the morning, right? They may also be tired, they may have stress, but still they're there. So if you don't, as a team member, show that respect, then that's not correct, right? So this is the thing that one should avoid, because this doesn't give a very good impression of being a right team member, or like showing arrogance, etc. Right? So hence option B is correct. Right? Let's look at the next question. Irina replies to her co-worker Brandon's email in a joking manner. So basically, just a like conversation, exchange of conversation, right? Even though she does not intend to sound rude or condescending, why should Irina avoid replying in this way? What should be the answer?
Emails should not be used when conducting business conversations.
That is answer C is what you're saying. Emails should not be used when conducting business conversations. Okay. I see some in the chat as well. Harika says A, Shamil says A. All right. Let's look at A. Let's see. That's correct. The way Irina thought she was joking is not easily conveyed over electronic communications, because when you're talking about verbally or when you're face to face is very different, but in an email that can be a little different. Point number B is also like quite close, because Brandon may interpret the tone of her email in a way she did not intend him to, because while you may be intending to say in a particular way, but I may not interpret it in the same way in an email, because again, it's an email at the end of the day, it's not face to face, right? So both the options are very close, but the option A is more close, because the way that Irina thought she was joking is not easily conveyed. The option B comes after that, right? So hence option A is correct. Let's look at the next question. What is the easiest way for you to avoid office drama? What's the easiest way? Okay. Shamil says C. Option C.
Option
All right.
A, sir.
Option A. All right. Let's look at option C first. Let's see. Incorrect. Right? Because this will actually lead to more drama, because others will challenge your comment. You can't say that, right? Then let's look at option A. Correct. You can avoid office drama by only involving yourself in issues that affect you directly. Otherwise, you're out of it. So that is important. So do not allow yourself to be pulled into it. You just stick on to what you are there for, and that's important. And this is not only true in office. This is true for school, college, or everywhere that you work, right? So that way. Harika also had mentioned option B, but again, Harika, that's not the correct option, right? So keep your communications to business issues that may not be at some point in time possible, because we all are human beings. Somebody may be wanting to tell you something, and you may get into a private setting and listen to that, right? So while technically keeping your communications to business issues is correct, that's an ideal world, but we all don't stay in ideal world. So a lot of times, we get into situations where we need to be kind of having the conversations, but have that conversations in a private setting. Do not do it in the office, and ensure you maintain a maturity along it. And that is where you will not get pulled into it, because you will not get pulled into it if you're really not impacting you directly, right? You can avoid it. Hence, that is important. Right, let's look at the next one. Your team has a monthly wrap-up meeting at a local pub after work, so which means drinks, etc. is going to be served. Even though you are on your own time, under what condition would your coworker perceive you as unprofessional? And this is a very, very important and critical question. What would be the answer? So under what condition would your co-workers perceive you as unprofessional? When will they think you are unprofessional? Raghuram says option C. What else? Anybody else? Anything?
Option B.
B. Okay. Let's look at option B first. Incorrect. There is something worse than not engaging in business talk on your free time, right? Let's look at option C. Correct. The meeting is still business sponsored, even though it is after work. So a professional business decorum is expected. Now, this is a company sponsored event. It can be your free time. That is fine. But still, the bill is being paid by the company, and this is a co-worker you're going with. Even if you're friends at work, but still, there is some amount of decorum and professionalism that needs to be expected of you, right? Because these are not just friends with whom you stay in your colony or stay in your locality. They're still your office colleagues. So even if it might be, so there's a difference between being friend and being friendly, right? So being friendly is fine because it's an office colleagues, but then not necessarily every time somebody will become a friend. Yes, it is also true that sometimes office colleagues may also become a friend, but that's maybe 1 or 2, not 10, 12, 20, right? So when you are going from an office or when you are going from an organization where the bills, etc., is being sponsored, so even if it is like an after work hours, some sort of professionalism needs to be maintained, and that's important. Okay. All right, now let's move on to the next, how to use the technology.
It used to be that there was a very clear line between work time and personal time. Work could only be done in the office, so once you left, personal time began. These days, thanks to technology, this line is a lot more blurry. We can pretty much work from anywhere, whether it's during our morning commute or on a beach in Tahiti. And similarly, it's easy to complete personal errands while in the office, like paying bills or researching your next vacation destination. Given these blurred lines, it's really important to avoid the mistake of blending work and personal time. This can impact you in both directions. You can easily burn yourself out by not making work boundaries clear and allowing it to bleed into your home life. You can also burn bridges at work by doing too many personal errands while on the clock. So set yourself up for success by setting clear boundaries. You'll be happy you did. Social media and work have a complicated relationship. Back in the dark ages, when I started my first job, the advice was to completely avoid being friends on social media with anyone you work with. These days, that advice feels slightly dated. It's nice to be friends with the people you work with, and social media offers you the opportunity to share things outside of the office. That being said, it is important to recognize that unless your job specifically requires it, you should avoid using social media at work. Save it for your evenings and weekends, and if you do choose to be friends with coworkers, be extremely careful about what you post. Everything you do publicly reflects back on the company, and it has become extremely common for people to be let go because of wayward social media posts. So be smart with your social media. It might feel private, but ultimately, if it's on the internet, consider it public. Modern offices have come a long way from the cold, drab cubicle mazes that I worked in early in my career. However, they are also chock full of distractions. These days, you'll find unlimited snacks and coffee, open concept layouts providing ample opportunities for hallway chats with friends, video games, board games, not to mention funny Slack channels, piles of emails, and a calendar filled with meetings about meetings to discuss when you're going to have more meetings. But you're not going to fall for this. I want to help you avoid the common mistake of getting too distracted. And honestly, with all the distractions in a modern office, it's amazing that any work ever gets done at all. It's really important to learn early on how to be as productive as possible in an endlessly distracting environment. Here are a few things that can help. If your company uses Slack or another similar messaging platform, limit the channels that you're in and optimize your notifications. If you're getting a ping every time someone posts a hilarious GIF in the vegan recipes channel, you're doing it wrong. Set aside heads down time and put all notifications on Do Not Disturb. Build in distraction time. Allow yourself a walk around the building. It is easier to focus now if you know you're allowing yourself a break at a specific time. Invest in a nice pair of noise-canceling headphones, especially if you work in an open office environment. These can be a lifesaver. And finally, don't be afraid to leave your desk and find a quiet spot elsewhere in the building where you can focus. It's that simple. Now don't get too distracted.
All right, let's look at the quiz. This is all about using your technology, the different tools, etc. that's there, right? And the questions are going to be on that. So question number 1, Glenna forwards emails from customers to Anton after work hours with a, can you please respond request? Anton is not a manager. What should he do? What should be the answer? Anyone? Anybody? Any answers? No answers? Okay. Let's look at some options. Okay, somebody has mentioned something in chat. That's Raghuram. It says option number B. Okay, let's look at option number B. Wrong. They are two separate things. And doing personal business on company time is a good way for Anton to get discharged, right? So that's wrong. Let's look at option number C. Correct. So basically, someone is not obligated to work after hours. The question here is Glenna forwards emails to customers to Anton after work hours. So nobody is obligated to work after hours, right? Hence, option number C is more relevant here. Next question. Kensia and Skylar work at the same company and both politically active. What should they consider when discussing political issues with each other on social media? What is the answer here? What should one be careful about discussing on social media? And especially when you are colleagues from the same organization and friends on social media. What's the answer? Option B. Raghuram says option B. Okay, let's look at option B. And that's correct. Everybody is entitled to political disclosure, but both of them need to be carefully separate in the in what they communicate, right? And this is applicable to all of us. We all have the right to speak about what we feel, but how we do it is important. Where we do it and how we do it, because everything has an implication. The choice of words, the language, the tone, everything is important, and hence it is very critical. Last question here. How can you best avoid getting distracted during your workday? Very easy. Raghuram says option A. Turn off notifications on your mobile devices. All right, let's see. Correct. This will not eliminate all distractions, but it will eliminate more than the other two answers will. Yes, because mobile devices are connected not only through the chats, but also the groups, the emails, the various other groups that you're part of, because obviously we all use mobile very frequently. So every time certain messages that keeps coming up, so hence mobile has more potential. Noise cancelling headphones to some extent can help you. Setting aside for yourself to move around also kind of help, but the largest share is like the mobile, right? Great, excellent. Now we are at the last section of this topic, and listen to it carefully, because this is a very, very important section. It's about career advancement. How, and of course we all work in an organization to actually grow in our careers. So what should we do and what we should not do is very important, right? So listen to this section very carefully, and this is the last section for the day. So let's listen to it.
Early on in my career, I made the mistake of thinking that just putting my head down, working hard, and doing a good job was going to be enough. While those things are all important, it's also important to remember that your number one career advocate should be yourself. Your boss likely has multiple direct reports and will be looking to you to help them make the case that you're ready for a promotion or to take on that new project, or that you're simply deserving of a raise. A very common mistake is not tracking your accomplishments. Some good advice I once received was to keep a notebook on my desk and at least once a week, write down your accomplishments for that week. If you can do it every day, even better. Think as though you were planning to update your resume. What problem did you face that week? What action did you take to resolve it? And what was the result? You may think you'll always remember, but trust me, when faced with filling out a personal evaluation, it is significantly easier to have these ideas jotted down as they happened rather than trying to recall them months later. Trust me, write down your accomplishments. It will go a long way. One of the mistakes I made early in my career was not setting goals. I didn't like to think long term, so I was just operating day to day and doing whatever was put in front of me. The problem with that philosophy is that you can wake up one day and realize that you're on a path you didn't intend to be on, or one that you might not even enjoy. Also, goals can help you see the bigger picture. So if your day-to-day begins to feel like a grind, you have a longer-term vision to help you get through it. Make sure your goals are SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, and reevaluate them often. It's okay if your goals change. Sometimes we start down a path and realize it's not what we wanted to do after all. Don't be afraid to try things out and change your mind. Having SMART goals is a great way to help you find a path that you do want to be on. If you work for a bigger organization, there are likely opportunities everywhere. Avoid making the mistake of having tunnel vision and not looking for opportunities outside of your current division or department. Make friends on other teams. Chat with them about what they do. I know plenty of people who have had the equivalent of 3 or 4 different jobs all within the same company. So keep an eye out for interesting projects or people that you would like to work with. And if there's a specific role that you're interested in, but you don't feel qualified for it, talk to the team and ask them what you can do to make them consider you. Hiring is one of the hardest things that companies have to do, so they generally would prefer to allow a lateral jump internally than have to take a risk of a new hire. Your current company is your best network, so take advantage of it. Like a lot of millennials, I was raised by baby boomers. Baby boomers are known for their job loyalty. In fact, according to one survey, more than 40% of America's baby boomers stayed with their employer for more than 20 years. This loyalty is commendable, but it is important to realize that times have changed and that today, that kind of loyalty isn't always rewarded in the way that it was for our parents and grandparents. In fact, in some cases, remaining loyal to your company may be hindering your career growth. And a really common career mistake is not knowing when to move on from your current position. But when is the right time to move on? Obviously, it's hard to come up with a hard and fast rule since everyone's situation will be different. But some fantastic advice I once received from a manager was to optimize for learning. The most important aspect of your current role should be that you're being given opportunities to learn and grow. I think this is especially true early on in your career when your risk tolerance for change is higher. Whether that is by learning new skills or taking on new projects, always be on the lookout for ways to strengthen your skills. If these opportunities aren't presenting themselves, or even worse, if you're being prevented from acquiring new skills, it might just be time for you to move on. Did you know that the World Health Organization has included workplace burnout in its international classification of diseases? Working yourself to the point of causing yourself physical or emotional harm is a real risk in today's work environment. And that's why it's so important to regularly check in with yourself and make sure you're not getting burned out. Burnout can be sneaky. Sometimes you don't realize you're on the road to burnout until you're already there. There are a few telltale signs, though. Are you feeling more tired than normal, both physically and emotionally? Are you less patient with people? Are you quicker to anger, quicker to frustration? Is it taking you longer to get things done because you're just not motivated? Are you spending more time worrying about all the things that you need to do rather than actually doing them? These are all signs that you're getting burned out. So if you're feeling this way, take a break. Take some time off and really think about what led to this burnout. Is it something that you can change? Can you talk to your manager about getting more support or more training, or ask them to take a project off of your plate? If it's not, don't be afraid to look for other opportunities that will provide more work-life balance. Your physical and emotional health are more important than your career.
Okay, now let's look at the set of questions. Right. Yeah. So Pietro keeps his head down, does exemplary work, and does not draw attention to himself. What mistake might Pietro be making that would most affect his career trajectory? What could be doing Pietro more harm than good? Answer? Anybody?
Option C.
Option C. Okay, let's look at it. That's right. So one needs to definitely track self-accomplishments to show them to the leadership or the management later, so that, like, they know what you are doing, right? It's very important to keep a track of that. Otherwise, in the midst of all the things and the work, you will lose it. So it's very important to keep that in mind, right? So hence option C. Next question. What mistake do many people make when it comes to their goals? This is a very interesting one. Raghuram says option B. All right, let's look at option B. They often change their goals. Incorrect. This is not a mistake, because you can keep changing your goals, because you may realize that something that you want to do initially may not be the right thing you want to do. So you can change your goals. That's fine. But what's the mistake when it comes to their goals?
Option C.
Option C, to quickly adopt. And people who quickly adopted were successful during this time. Hence the goals changed, right? So one has to be really flexible as well. Is it considered a mistake for you to have a tunnel vision? A tunnel vision is something which is like in a very focused and straight. So is it considered a mistake? There is an answer which says option B. All right, let's look at option B. Even if you're a CEO or whichever role you are in, right, it's got nothing to do with the tunnel vision. It's applicable for everybody. So it doesn't depend where you are in the organization.
It's option C.
Somebody says A. All right, let's
Option
look at
C.
Okay, we'll look at both. Let's look at option A first. Incorrect. You always want to perform like well in your job. Who doesn't want to perform well in the job, right? But there may be something like in your long-term vision which will prevent you, and hence it is C. Because it is a mistake if you have a tunnel vision, because it keeps you from looking for opportunities. Because tunnel vision means like I am doing only one, and that's it. So it's like a bull who is running straight, who is not looking left, right, and center. That's not great in the longer run, right? So one should be flexible. Yes, one should have a vision. One should be focused on what they are doing, but that doesn't stop them from exploring opportunities or speaking with teams or speaking with people and learning how to develop. So that lateral is also very important, right? So hence it is option C. Question number 4. Kaito thinks it might be time to move on from this company. What is the determining factor one would justify to leave with decisions? Okay, so basically this question means that if somebody wants to leave or move on from a company, what would be the logic behind it? What could be the logic behind it? Which answer? When does one feel that, you know what, okay, no, I am done. I have to kind of leave and
Option
move on.
A.
Option A. All right, let's look at option A. Incorrect. So he should first discuss with his manager or the leadership team to understand what kind of opportunities are there at all. Without discussing, how does he come to a conclusion that there is no opportunity? That is his own thinking, but has he discussed? He hasn't. Okay, so in the chat, Raghuram says option B. Let's see, option B. Incorrect. Before making the decision to move on, you should have a conversation with the manager, because again, look at option B. He does not feel he fits with the company strategy. How does he know what the company strategy is without even discussing it? Right? So option C is the right answer. He has not been given additional responsibilities. See, in a work environment, there are certain indicators. Once you start getting those indicators, you realize that you are in the right place. What are those indicators? You may be doing project 1, then you've been given some additional work, then you're getting into some learning. So there is always some sort of a movement, something or the other. Movement is not necessarily only vertical. Movement can be horizontal and lateral as well, right? So if you're given additional responsibility, there's an indication that company values you or the team values you, manager values you, and hence you are being given an opportunity. I think that's a good position to be in, right? So I think this is the answer. And the last question. Mai feels that she is getting burned out from being overloaded at work. What is the best action she should take to stop feeling this way? So when one feels overloaded at work or studies or anywhere, right? Anywhere in life, what is it that one should do? What is the best action? What's the first thing that should come to the mind when somebody is feeling overloaded at work? At work, office. What's the first thing? Raghuram says option B. Anybody else? Any other option?
Option C.
Let's look at option C. That's right. At work, you should first ask your manager, and tell him or her, what, I am feeling stressed out. Can you help? Or is there a different way to manage it? Or can I take a break, etc.? You just don't take a short vacation right away. At work, you just can't come to work on a Monday and tomorrow, I'm taking a short vacation. No, you can take a vacation, but you can discuss it and then take a vacation, right? So it's important to talk and discuss this to realize if somebody is able to help you or not. And most often than not, the managers may be able to help you out of it. So that is important, right? So talking is important before you take a decision. All right. And the last 43 seconds of this chapter, let's listen.
All right, so there you have it. I hope you can now see by avoiding these common mistakes, you'll be well positioned to not only get more done, but stand out at work and transform your career. As you may have guessed, your learning doesn't stop here. In fact, I've barely scratched the surface on a lot of these mistakes. There are great courses on this platform that can help you do better at work. Courses on using to-do lists or managing your time or improving your relationship with your manager. So definitely dive in deeper there. So that's it. Stay in touch, connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter. I would love to hear from you. Congrats on completing this course. You're now well equipped to avoid making too many mistakes at work.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. So as you heard from the instructor towards the end, that what we learned in the class today is just the scratch. It's like, it's a tip of an iceberg. There is much more to really learn about, how one should behave or what are the behavioral aspects at work, all those things, right? So, and we all, with time and experience, we'll keep on learning more. But this is important to kind of, what you learned, you also practice. And this is not only true for only organizations, but also at the college or at the work that whatever then you do. Even in college, the 2 years or 3 years or 4 years that you will spend is very important, because that is where you build these ethics and it becomes important, right? So hence this is something which you will hopefully find it valuable. Any questions, any thoughts, anybody, before we end our class today? Did you guys find it helpful? Was it meaningful? Do you guys understand, enjoy the quizzes? Anybody, any thoughts? Okay. If not, then that's fine. I think thank you for attending the classes, and we can close it today. From the next class onwards, that is in December or whenever the next classes are, before that, I'll be sharing those assignments and in the groups, and then all of you have to kind of work towards that. So we'll have more of these presentations, we'll have more of these use cases. So whatever we have learned in the last 3-4 classes, whatever the videos and audios you have heard, I hope you have kind of taken down notes and understood the larger thing, because now is the time that will come where you have to now make presentations, you will have to now talk, you will have to kind of share your ideas and solutions, etc., right? So hence that's important, right? Okay, all right then. Thank you for attending, and we shall see again later.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.